Now your product is better, your offering is better, so maybe you'll get more customers. And that stuff's harder a little bit to evaluate. And this is like the promise of AI. I think it's like very narrow to just look at it only from a cost savings perspective.
I really don't think people have got their heads around how much things are going to change with this technology. I went to Bolt and I said, just in my regular words in English, I said, I want an app where I can cut and paste a chart into the app. And so now I can just copy and paste that code and I get this really cool interactive chart.js chart. All your dreams have come true. By offloading all that grunt work to the AI, you can have a bigger team in a sense, or a more powerful team that can produce more and make your company more competitive.
Ed, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Aiden. I'm really stoked to be here.
Thanks for joining. I know it's the end of the day for you today, but there's no time like the present to talk about AI, so I'm excited to have you on. So lots of stuff to talk about. I mean, this is the stuff that you basically live and breathe every day. Lots of really, really great topics that we're going to get into. But maybe in your own words, Ed, if you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself and the type of work that you do so they kind of have a sense for where you're coming from as we're having this conversation.
I sort of fell into AI. I'm not a highly technical person. I just happened to these two worlds collided for me. So I was formerly head of product at an online learning company, and that company started to kind of shrink. I got laid off and I spent about a year doing product consulting. But all anyone wanted to talk about was AI. Everyone was trying to figure out, like, how do we use this? It obviously looks very powerful, but what can we do with it? And so I luckily got attached to a few projects where people were actually pushing it and trying to create production apps. So that's a big deal, like production apps versus just building anything, right? The bar is much, much higher when it comes to building a production app.
Yeah, it's so important because, again, you see these shiny demos, it looks really cool, or you see a clip on YouTube or somewhere where it's like, yeah, this AI agent can talk just like a human and can do all these things, but what happens in production?
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's really easy to impress someone with a whiz-bang demo. But then where the rubber hits the road is like, is this software reliable, consistent, accurate? And as a subject matter expert or someone who's trying to do their job, does it help me do my job, or does it make mistakes and get in the way and cause me more pain than I already have? What I saw in my consulting time was essentially like leadership making mistakes, leadership making bad decisions around which projects to go for, or they were handing off the responsibility of doing that work to a tech team that wasn't really aligned with the business. So I started Machine and Partners as a way to offer wisdom essentially to management teams to say, like, hey, like, let's investigate, like, what would be a good AI use case for your company? And maybe there's none. That you have to sort of accept that maybe there might be nothing worth building for yourself. But it quickly became clear that we couldn't do this if we weren't actually building something. So at first it was just like consulting and like, let's just talk about, more product oriented and product strategy oriented. But it was clear right away that we had to build something, because the name of the game is really de-risking. How do you de-risk the decision to build software? And the bar for software building is getting lower. I think we're all kind of seeing that, but the standards for quality software is still the same. And so what we basically, Machine and Partners is essentially like a little R&D company, and we help companies identify use cases for where AI might have an impact on their business. We do due diligence on those to make sure these are good use cases, that they're actually going to have an ROI. And then we investigate, like, how hard would it be to build this? What roadblocks are we going to run into? What difficulties? Is this an ML project? Is this a Gen AI project? What's the best way to go about this? And at the same time, we up-level the existing team of that company. So if they have engineers, which they usually do, then we're inviting them in and we build together. I think we have a really cool, interesting, unique process for doing this. And essentially that's what we're selling. We're selling the process to de-risk software investment in AI.
I think one of the cool things about this is you also get to see what other companies are doing. So you have this broad purview. And I think, every company's thinking about this, but it's nice to get an outside perspective, right? Like, even if it's like what you're doing is great, you're doing all the right things, don't worry. What would you say in your personal work? Like, how are you working differently because of AI today?
Very broadly, just my mindset has changed. almost like every time I have to do anything, the first thing I ask myself is, can I offload this to AI? Can AI help me with this? Can AI, be my partner in this? So that wasn't always the case. It took me a while to build that muscle or that instinct because I'm 50 years old and I've been doing things the same way for like my whole life. And so it takes a little bit of effort to actually, reorient myself towards an AI powered work style. But so like, it's like you could almost point at any single thing that I work on and I can show you an AI powered or AI augmented, process. So just you asked this question, but off the top of my mind, there's so many things. Like I do a lot of writing. So I have various tools that I use from ChatGPT and from Claude to help me write in a more structured, consistent way. So this is both from the ideation side all the way to the, final polishing side. So I have some tools for that. As far as like back office automation, we used to have a CRM, just classic, everybody's got a CRM, right? But the CRM sucks. It's got all the, you have to work the way it wants to work. And we're relatively small. We don't have, that's overkill for our small business. And really what I wanted was other things. So we started eating away at the CRM and taking over some of its functions and sort of automating that. So I'm in the process now of building some automations with tools like N8N and Gumloop and Make.com and Relay to, build these agentic kind of automations that use LLMs in processes along with third-party software that would normally be offloaded to the CRM. So I would much rather pay these smaller, more discrete companies for doing the exact value that I want than paying the money to the CRM to aggregate it in a way that I don't want. And then additionally, I'm moving more towards building like what I would call micro software, where if there's a job I need done, I don't look for a tool online anymore. The first question I ask myself is, can I build this in Bolt or Replit?
Yeah, and that's a crazy thing if I can build it myself. That's a powerful notion. Yeah, you were telling me about that. What was that application that you recently built? And I think you use Bolt. And for everybody listening, that's bolts.new.
Yeah, Bolt.new is essentially I don't know, it's like an accelerator app builder. It basically builds, I think by default, it builds like JavaScript. I can't remember what the Next.js framework with SHAD CN as a UI. Like it's got like these out of the box defaults that are very normal. You can tell it in words what you want it to build. You could say, I want an application that does X, Y, and Z, and then it will just sit there and churn and build. And you sort of watch it. It'll hit a snag, and it'll say, "Oh, I had an error. Do you want me to fix it?" And you go, "Yeah, fix it." And then it fixes itself and continues going. And every once in a while, you have to help it along because it runs into a wall somewhere. But it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing what it could do. So just the other day, I had this use case where I write a lot of blog posts, and one of the things I'll do is I'll go research for the content of the post. And inevitably in doing that research, I'll sort of run into a chart or a graph. I'm like, oh, that's a really nice chart. And so what I used to do was I want to recreate that chart rather than just cut and paste it and like copy it. It won't look good in my blog. And, as I want it to look good. So I would go into Google Sheets and I would sort of recreate the chart meticulously by copying and pasting the data points and all this stuff. And it is such a pain. Yeah. And I did a lot. So at some point I've wised up. Again, this is like my old mindset versus my new mindset. At some point I sort of wised up and I said, why am I doing this? So I would copy and paste the chart into ChatGPT and I would say, hey, ChatGPT, give me a CSV of the data that is represented in this chart. And then churn, and they would spit out the file. And then I would open the file in Google Sheets. And then I would go through the same process of making the colors match my blog and all this stuff, right? So I did that for a little bit. And then I was playing with Bolt and I was like, hey, I think I could actually do better than that. So I went to Bolt and I said, just in my regular words in English, I said, I want an app where I can cut and paste a chart into the app. And I want you to extract the data that created that chart. I want you to then build a chart.js that I can embed in my website. So, and I want this color palette and stuff like that. So now, I mean, it works. It took 10 minutes for Bolt to create this app with a little bit of prodding from me. It needed my OpenAI API key, and it was getting confused around the sort of which model to use and stuff like that. But it was very effortless as far as like what it would take to do this normally.
It's interesting. I've been using Bolt as well to build a bunch of things. The other thing for those out there who have kids, I've been using this with one of my kids, my 8-year-old daughter, and the first thing I was like, what do you want to build? I want to build a game. What kind of game? Let's build like an ice cream maker game. And so we built this thing. She's using the Mac key where you can speak because she's not great at typing just yet. And so, yeah, she's asking for features, and it's just doing these things, and it's crazy. Just from also building interest in kids as well. I think this stuff really helps with that.
Totally. Okay, I found it. Let me just move it up so it's closer. I have so many tabs open that's another old habit that I need to figure out how to break. I'll show the result. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not much to look at. The chart image converter, I did not name that. The AI named it. I have to paste a chart, so give me a second to find a chart that I can paste in here. I don't know if this will open up in here. Let's see. I'm just going to pull some random chart off the internet. Okay, here's a good one. So I just click here and I click paste. You don't see the chart that I posted, but I basically just took a screenshot from the web of a pie chart, and you can see that it has the data.
Oh, interesting. So we're not seeing the actual chart, but this is like you pasted it and it immediately turned it into just something with data.
Yeah, it figured out what the data was. I don't know if I can share another. I'd have to switch tabs to show you but just to keep going. And then here's the predefined color palette. It can go dark to light or light to dark, depending on how you want it. So that's the color palette that I want for my blog, because I have a dark blog. And then here's the chart.js code, and it includes the script tag, and I can just copy and paste all this code. So it's got a copy feature. And, that's something that I added. I added the color palette stuff just by chatting with Bolt. So essentially what it's got here is it's got all the code, the embed code that you need to put that into my blog. So now instead of just having to go, I mean, you saw how fast that was, right? That it took seconds.
Yeah, it was instant. Yeah.
And so now I can just copy and paste that code, and I get this really cool interactive chart.js chart instead of just an image that I would have normally posted in there.
Do you have like the Bolt history of like what kinds of prompts you were sending it? And did you have a sense for how long it took you to get this to the state that it is?
Yeah, I think it probably took 10 or 15 minutes. I mean,
okay,
yeah.
So that's pretty quick.
Yeah, let me see if I can log into Bolt. Okay, so this is Bolt over here. It's got the code, so it's quite a bit of code to do all this stuff. Let's see. So here's the components it's built, chart preview, color palette, etc. And so I could go here if I wanted to update this, like you said, hey, it didn't show you when I paste the chart. I don't know if this is going to work, but
let's try it. Let's see.
Show the chart I pasted on the screen as you are recreating. I don't know if it's you recreating it. Okay.
Yeah, so this is cool. So you're chatting in, and it just starting to modify the code. This is great.
Yeah, so it says, I'll modify the app component to show both the original pasted image and the recreated chart. Like, it knows what I'm talking about. I'll update the necessary files, add this functionality, and here it goes. And you can see it's off to the races, writing a bunch of code for this. I mean, it's like, this is the part that takes out. And
that was quick.
It's got there. So let me just paste the same chart and see what happens.
All right. So there's the original chart. That's cool. So it shows both.
Yeah. So, I mean, that took what?
I feel like a valued customer or something. I asked for a feature and like you built it on the spot during the call. This is great. Every software company should do this.
Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing to see like no errors, but obviously like for, everybody listening, when you start doing this, it can get frustrating. It can get stuck, like you said. And, but you have to be patient, and it's also being able to describe what you want really well and clearly too really helps.
I saw a conference recently, or like a video of a conference of this guy. I think it was the AI engineering conference or something. And he was from, I can't remember what company he was from, but he had built like an AI agent that would dynamically create code for a mail client. So he built a mail client that had no code base. He just said, when I ask, here's my Google API key. And when I ask to see my email, you go show me my email. And it dynamically writes code to show his email based only on his Gmail API key. So then it would like sort of spit out. It would take 3 minutes to show his email. I mean, that's insane, right? But it's pretty crazy that that was like on-demand code being written. That's an on-demand application being written to show him his mail. And then it knew, like when it showed him his list of mail, he could click on anything in the list and it would go show him the actual mail and he could go back. So it knew enough to create this kind of basic application on the fly.
Yeah, that in your day to day that you'll be able to automate away like this. I did want to also ask you about the writing one because I know that you use, I mean, like you said, you use Claude a lot for your writing. You update your blog a lot. One of the common complaints I've heard is that, if I use AI to help me with my writing, it sounds like AI and it doesn't sound like me. And, I have to do more work editing it than writing it myself. And so I think a lot of people just give up. And so if you could show us like how you go about it and like what your process is or how it helps you.
Yeah, we talked about this. So I went and I looked at the kind of the setup that I have on Claude, and I thought it would probably be cooler to like recreate it from scratch if people actually want to use a technique like this. So rather than going in and sort of unpacking what I had already built, because I think like creating it from scratch will show you like how easy it is to get something like this up and running. So do you mind
That'd
if I
be
do it that way?
amazing. Yeah, I'd be
Okay.
excited. Let's see it. So you like Claude for writing versus ChatGPT. It
Some
depends on the
days,
week.
some days, yeah, yeah. It's really funny how those two, have their strengths and weaknesses, but I have a hard time articulating exactly what they are. Like, I think Claude certainly for code writing seems really good, and I think for like it's a certain kind of writing, like the kind of writing I do is like oriented towards business leaders, and it's like sort of technical and it's businessy. Claude seems to have a little bit more warmth and kind of gets my humor, maybe. I don't know. Whereas ChatGPT, it can sometimes be a little like either not talkative enough or sometimes it's overly verbose. I don't know. Just isn't quite the tone, doesn't always nail it for me. But if I'm trying to learn something, I really like learning on ChatGPT. I feel like it's a much better tutor. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I have found the 4.5 model is better at writing.
oh,
Whereas like versus 4.0, yeah, I would agree that Claude's 3.7 model is especially like really, really good at writing.
I was going to say that Claude has this thing called projects. So if I go here, there's projects. So if I'm just doing a chat, a chat might happen here like you would expect. But if you
Hmm.
go to projects, then you can create a new project. So I'm just going to say blog writing assistant. I'm sorry you have to see me type in real time.
It's
Yeah,
all good.
ghostwriter. I was just going to show really quickly
Yeah, let's see it.
the blog so you can get a sense. So like here's deep thoughts. So this is like the blog. And so an article.
Hallucinations or practical guide. I like that title.
So it's a little bit wonky, but it also has kind of examples that are more concrete, and I try and use a lot of analogies, and I try to break things down a little bit more. So like it's just like my style of writing. I like to explain things, especially to a business audience that maybe doesn't know this stuff very well. So I'm going to stop sharing this, switch to now Claude. So just give you a sense of kind of what the writing looks like. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this project, the project is my blog writing assistant, so it's something I can reuse over and over again. So I'm going to add some project knowledge, and I'll upload. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a couple of articles that I've written. So I have, actually that article on hallucinations, and there's another article about sort of why developers are still important and you need to have them. And I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to add a style guide. So I have a blog article style guide, and I probably should share that. I don't know if it'll let me open it. Let's see.
Did you write the style guide yourself?
Yeah, so here it is. It's really simple. Blog article style guide, audience. This is like a header. The audience for this blog is non-technical business leaders at various levels and across every industry. The tone for the articles is friendly. I'm just giving a lot of guidelines for kind of like how I want these articles to be so I don't have to repeat myself.
Do you reference the articles you uploaded in the style guide, or that's just sits
Yes.
solo? Okay.
Yeah, so I'll show you that in a second. So then the other part of Claude that's really cool, so that's got set project instructions right here. So I'm going to click this, and I'm just going to paste in what I would put. So I said, you are a professional ghostwriter. You are inquisitive and helpful. Write in the style of the two attached articles to mimic my tone and style. Follow the style guidelines to create an article on the given topic. Don't start writing until you understand the theme and argument of the article. Ask as many questions as you need to understand the theme and argument.
Oh, I love that.
Okay. So I'm giving it like this is kind of its raison d'etre. And those other things are examples of my writing style that it can mimic. So this helps get away from that problem that you were solving where it's like, oh, it sounds too robotic or whatever. So let's say I want to write an article about MCP and why it is the beginning of a profound change to internet infrastructure.
By the way, as you're writing this, you're using this and for your blogs, but you could create something to help you write emails. You could create something to help you write LinkedIn posts. You could, again, it's whatever you want, as long as you have examples and you can instruct this clearly, you could use it for those things.
Yeah. So I'm saying I want to write an article about MCP and why it's beginning of product. So what I do is I'm a little bit different. Like I don't actually at this point, I don't have it write the article. I usually go through and say, let's create an outline together. And that gives me more control over the structure because I'm much more picky about what's in the article. I want to have like insights and I definitely want to get my opinions in there. So I actually spend quite a bit of time at this phase putting the right words into this box to get out what I want. And I usually start with an outline because the outline is the blank page problem, gets me over that hump and I can see, oh, okay, I see. We're going to be talking about this kind of stuff. And then I can adjust the outline until I get it where I want. And then I go, okay, now write the first draft. But just for the sake of time and stuff, like let's just skip over that and go right to the article writing. So it knows the length and it knows all that stuff. Let's see how well it does here. I'd see, maybe it'll ask me a question. It probably should. Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
I asked it to be inquisitive in those custom instructions to like make sure that it understood the theme and the argument that I was trying to make. So it's asking me like 5 questions is a lot, but actually this is what I want. So what specific aspects of, and I don't know if we should do all this, but what specific aspects of,
yeah, you can basically say like, use your best judgment and like go in this case.
Yeah. Let me give it one thought because I do have a thought here. I think that's pretty interesting that it chose to do that because, MCP is relatively new. I'm not sure Claude actually has anything in its training data about or anything significant about MCP. So I think it's really interesting that it actually chose to search the web. That shows kind of some intelligence, right? So here it goes, blah, 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 writing. I told it I wanted a TLDR at the beginning that summarizes the article. And I didn't give it much to go on here, right? So let's see what it says. The internet infrastructure revolution nobody's talking about because I told it I wanted a title that was clever. So it didn't just do like MCP, and it's spot on. I mean, that's true, right? This is cool because this is the kind of stuff that I would talk about because I like to bring up these technical things and say, hey, these are real things and they have implications and they have ramification on the world that we live in late 2024. So it got this obviously from its web research. I could probably enhance this by saying, if you do web research, like pull data, like create some charts that I can use if relevant, right? I could put that in the instructions. So this is actually giving me some good ideas.
Yeah, but this is, again, it's a really great start. You can obviously like prompt a bit more, make sure that the storytelling is good. What is just like philosophically speaking, because this is a question that, I'm sure people are asking, which is, well, like, did you write this article or did AI write this article? And so what do you say to the crowd that's thinking that?
Oh gosh, that's it's a good question, but like this article would never have come to pass if I hadn't have done what we just did. I give myself credit. Thank you very much. I think this is a bit of the author, the instigator. I think of AI as like a sandwich, right? You are the instigator and you are the judge. And the AI might create the meat in the sandwich that's kind of the bulk of it. But without you instigating and judging whether it's good, like it's nothing. It's not going to come up with it on its own.
Yeah. It's a bunch of interns. You can hire a bunch of PhD interns. Doesn't mean that the work is going to be really good. Like you said, you still have to orchestrate it and put it together. And you own the output at the end of the day. Like if it's really great, this article will be shared, on the internet. It'll get a lot of views. The human judgment still matters.
I will be writing this article. So, in a couple of weeks, if you look at my website and you see that, you're going to be like, oh, I know where that came from. But I do take that seriously because I find that the AI is really good at kind of bulking up, right? But I need to give the skeleton and I need to do all the finishing touches. However, I think it's pretty good at the general, struck the sort of argument and the flow actually better than I am because I tend to meander. So the writing from the AI is actually much more structured and better. And then I put my polish and I'll do a lot of rearranging post facto to make it like what I want it to be and to have my voice. I can just do it so much faster with the tool at my side.
True. Thank you for showing this to us. It's all about the use cases. One thing that might be interesting is there anything that stands out from the orgs that you've worked with, where something was like very transformative or made a big change, was a big win?
We have a client who they're a data platform and they scrape government documents for, data. And these government documents, there's a set schema that they're trying to populate and they're trying to fill out this database. And then their analysts use that database to then do their jobs to report to their clients and things like that. The way that they do it, or the way they did do it, was that they had a team of 70 people in India who meticulously would read through these documents as they were published to pick out, individual data points and stick it into the database. And so they had built an elaborate form essentially to allow these folks to do it, and they would triple check it to get the quality out of it. Obviously, that seems like low-hanging fruit for AI, right? And so it looked like an obvious use case. And so we said, yeah, let's attack it. Let's see what we can do there. We found out very quickly that those documents are very hard to parse. They're really messy. They're not clean. They've got lots of tables, charts, things that are hard to parse. And so we built a fairly sophisticated parsing engine that could go through and grab the data out. And the engine was interesting because we had encapsulated expertise into the engine. And the engine was comprised of a bunch of what we call extractors. And the extractors had a little job, right? The job is to find one part or one piece of the data or one kind of group of data in this big 150-page document. And so there was a lot of smarts in that extractor. And in order to get all the data out of a document, it might take 40, 50 extractors to get everything you need. And this allowed us to then make those extractors better and better over time and create a really, really high quality, high accuracy extraction system.
Do they not use humans anymore in this process?
They still use a human. The extraction process used to take 6 hours for each document. And now it takes 1 hour because we have a human that goes through and validates all the data points that the AI pulls out. The AI is not perfect. It's like 95% accuracy. So it'll go through and it presents the data to a human in kind of a step-by-step way. And then they're able to go, oh yeah, that's right, that's right, that's right. Oh, wait a second, this one's wrong. And then they can fix it. And that way they maintain the high quality standard that they need. But they went from 6 hours to 1 hour. That's a huge transformation. What's interesting though is, and there's thousands of these documents that go through the system. So you're talking about 6,000 hours per season, per filing season saved. Significant.
Yeah.
But the thing that is interesting is what happened was when we did this work, we realized that our extractors could pull much more out of the document than just these data points. We could pull semantic information. We could build a knowledge graph of the people that are in the documents. We could have knowledge that spans multiple documents. You could look at a company's filing over time. So you could do all this new stuff that wasn't possible with the old system. And in the ability to store that information in a new way, then suddenly it has an impact on the analysts who are looking for that information. So now the value creation, right? So this is what we're focused on. The company sort of charges internally $3,000 per data pull to get the original set of data that they use in their reports. But they charge their clients like $50,000 for this report. So the real value creation is on the back end. It's at the end of the process when you're delivering this. And so, going from $3,000 to whatever 1/6 of that is, that's significant times thousands, right? But if you look at the place where the $50,000 report is created, can we make the generation of that report go from 1 week to 1 day? And we're working on that now. And we think we can do that by building kind of like a Python notebook for report building for these analysts, right? So that is radical transformation if you think about it both from the cost point of view and the efficiency point of view, but also like, how are they going to charge for this? Because right now they charge on the back of the analyst. The analyst takes a week. It's 40 hours to generate a report. So if we can do it in 8, then suddenly 4/5 of their billing time evaporates. So now they have to start charging by value or figure out some other way to evaluate their work.
And this is stuff that everybody's thinking about. I mean, accountants, lawyers, everybody's thinking about. Everything will go to value based. It's going to have to. I don't see any other way around it. But it is really interesting. And, the example that you gave just made me remember like this recent realization, which is that it's not only about time saved. I think, when we're trying to evaluate these things, a lot of times, the thing that comes to mind is efficiency, 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 time saved, less people, less departments, like these sorts of things. But then there's the additional part, which you just talked about, which is while we're at it, we're able to get all this extra data points. And sure, maybe you'll be able to create that report faster. To create the new type of report that you're able to create, maybe it would have taken you like a month to do it. You wouldn't have done it because the client wouldn't have paid that much of an analyst time. But now you can give that 1 month report like in a week report. And so now your product is better, your offering is better. So maybe you'll get more customers. And that stuff's, harder a little bit to evaluate. And this is like, I think the promise of AI. I think it's like very narrow to just look at it only from a cost savings perspective.
100%. 100%. I really don't think people have got their heads around how much things are going to change with this technology. And that's one way. And another way that people overlook is those analysts, before what they would have to do is go to raw documents, go to spreadsheets, do this sort of arduous, meticulous work to highlight things in cells and all this stuff, right? It really was not a pleasant job. And I can't tell you how many times when we were doing our product research, we would talk to the analysts and say, show me what you're doing now. And they're like, oh yeah. And we're like, how long does that take? And they're like, oh, I could do it in a day, but that would be a really bad day, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow, can we make your day better? And so now the enjoyment of the work goes up, right? The quality goes up, the enjoyment goes up. So you get like increase in pride, increase in happiness. And, that's not nothing. And maybe I'm woo-woo about it or whatever, but I think that goes, that leads to retention. It leads to higher quality work, like you said. And so, yeah, the dreamy part of me goes like, oh yeah, we're going to make everyone's lives like better and happier and, higher quality and more pride and stuff. But then there is also the toll, right? Because if you can get this work done that much more efficiently, then you can let people go. You can do more with less. And I think business leaders are going to have to wrestle with this around, do I let people go or do I make the throughput higher? Do I let my dreams come true of working like, more strongly?
I think AI raises the floor or the bar. So I just think that what's going to happen is people are going to assume more quality. I think the throughput will go higher and we'll just expect higher things. I mean, even from today, when you interact with like really great applications on the web or software, like your quality bar goes up. And if you go to a site that loads slow or it's a little like clunky, I mean, you'll write it off instantly, right? Whereas maybe like 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. So people are going to want that feeling of like, wow, it looks like you spent a year on this. How did you do this in a week? It'll be there. So thank you for explaining that. I think, the next question we always ask is how has AI impacted your company? And I think you started to explain this text extractor thing that you built. One of the things you were telling me before is that's one of the things that, recently was able to impact like your ability to do things within the company. Do you want to maybe tell that story?
Yeah, it's a funny story because we have product managers. They're not programmers, right? They're traditional product managers. And on our side, they're much more like business oriented and kind of like AI potential oriented, right? But they're not super technical. And then we have our developers, like as one does. So I had this one product manager, and he was like, "Hey, I'm tired of trying to explain everything that I want to happen to the developer." So he started to use these like no code tools to build his own prototypes. And he was showing the developer, and the developer's like, "How did you do this?" And so he was like, "Oh, I just, I'm using cursor and I'm putting these instructions. I'm using a thinking model." And he showed his whole technique. So our developers have been using cursor and AI powered tools, but they just had never thought about using it this way. So one of our senior developers, John, he's like, "Oh, I could use this to build more extractors. So the way you build an extractor is pretty set. So we had a few extractors that we had built. It is time consuming to build the extractor. And so we thought we were going to have to build like 30 or 40 of these extractors, and it was going to take us literally like months, right, to get those out the door. And so what Jean did, he's like, here's some extractors I built to the AI coding assistant inside Cursor, Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And he's like, here's some extractors I built. Now I want you to build a new extractor for this purpose using that model. And it spit one out like instantly. And he was like, you could just see his like eyes light up, and he's like, oh my God. And then he spent the next day building, I think he built like 20 or 25 extractors in one day. Like we would have thought that would have taken weeks, on our old estimate, and was able to then hand off those extractors to other people in the team who are junior developers to start testing them and like, increasing the quality, climbing the hill on the quality that they're producing. So that's
I mean,
mind blowing,
that's
right?
huge. It's
Yeah.
mind blowing. There's two things here. I know for the audience, there's a lot of leaders in the audience. I think there's two things. One is that by just encouraging AI across the board, interesting cross pollination happens, right? Like in this case, you wouldn't have thought that because of the non-technical PM would have inspired like the technical folks to figure out how to use this for software. You wouldn't have thought that, but this kind of stuff happens all the time. So everybody should be using something and sharing it. And then, yeah, I mean, it's insane to think that everybody has repetitive sorts of software that they need to write, whether it's documentation or whether it's tests or, I think about it, or whether it's integrations. If you build one integration and there's like 5 that you can do this kind of stuff, but it's amazing to see that you actually did that in practice and save that kind
Yeah.
of time.
I mean, the thing is, like, I think it's interesting. I have this conversation with non-technical business leaders all the time. They're like, "Oh, great, I get to fire all my developers, right? The AI is going to write all the code," and that's a completely wrong-headed view of this. Like, the truth is that our developer was critical to thinking about how to architect this system. It's just that building the remaining extractors would have been kind of like a bore. So the naivete of our product manager in trying something that he didn't know what would work, and that was going against what our developer, who was like, no, he had a bias, a sort of ego bias around like, no, I have to be writing all the code. I have to be making the decisions, right? But when he's not dumb, so when he saw that Chase, our product manager, had kind of created the system, he immediately realized the potential and said, oh, I don't have to do that boring work. I can offload it to an AI and I can manage the AI. So from the leader's perspective, it's like that never would have happened without the great developer that we have. The whole system that would have never been architected. The AI could have never architected the incredible system that he built, right? So now I think as a leader, you have to think, you've been spending the last 5 years wishing you had more money to have a bigger development team, right? You've been wishing that you could get the features out faster. You've been wishing you could squash more bugs. You've been wishing you could refactor that code like everyone's been complaining about. But you can't because you're resource constrained. And so now all your dreams have come true. By offloading all that grunt work to the AI, you can have like a bigger team in a sense, or a more powerful team that can produce more and make your company more competitive.
And I think the other nice thing is like, as you do this stuff, then, other people will get ideas. They'll say like, whoa, you did that here. Maybe I can do this there. Right. And it's in the beginning, it can feel like you're pushing, boulder up a hill, but at some point, it's pushing it down the hill. And so you can get there too. So that's a really cool example, 2 examples, both on the text extractor and then obviously, you creating the prototype from the PMs. So as we wrap up here, Ed, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I mean, following me on LinkedIn is a really good way, or connecting with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with folks and, learning from other people. So that's a good path. My website is machineandpartners.com. That's a good way to find me and see what I'm thinking. Other than that, I think that's probably it. I also teach courses at sectionschool.com, which is like a business where I used to work, and I teach like how to prompt and advanced prompting techniques and things like that. So if you're kind of a beginner and you want to learn the basics of AI and stuff, that could be a good place to go as well.
And we'll obviously include all of those in the show notes. And for listeners, if you sign up for thisnewway.com newsletter, we're going to give you step-by-step instructions to do the things that Ed showed us today. So if you didn't take notes, that's where you can get the content. And Ed, final question, what are you most excited about over the next 18 months?
Everything is moving so fast. It's like I'm old, so I was around in 1996 when the web started emerging. And I get these echoes all the time of that time period. Back then, nobody knew what a website was supposed to be. Nobody knew what e-commerce was, right? And then the mobile revolution happened. Nobody knew what an app was supposed to be. So these are amazing, wonderful times to live in because we get to build that stuff. We get to decide what that world is going to look like, right? And that I think that comes with like a lot of potential, but and a lot of responsibility as well for us to be managing those things. So I really am excited by just the general innovation that's happening across the board, both from the base models, the foundational models, but also I think more interestingly, what everyone is choosing to do with these things. I'm inspired every day by people like you and other people who are building companies around this technology to exploit things and create things that we really, literally were not possible 2 years ago. That's just kind of a general answer, but I think that's what really stokes me.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we're going to build the future. This is awesome. Ed, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was an honor to be on. I can't wait to listen to this one and catch up on some of the old ones I haven't heard yet.